UK and how I think it has gone astray. Don't get me wrong, it ain't all bad. I love the crazy fads, like England always buggering up. But you know we're gonna win the World Cup. I'm gonna start the old nation with myself for reservation. I'm gonna start the old nation with myself for reservation.
Keep the red flag flying here.
Hello, Pop, because Paul has been schooling me in when I can start talking. And I just contemplate for a while, talking at the wrong time, just to make him fed up. But in the end, I was a good boy. And so welcome to you. Welcome to everybody beginning to sign on to the comments, Tim and Jacqueline, and lovely to see you all. It's so good to see you all. And for the first time in months, my camera seems to be working right. So it's a good day today. Let's say hello to the marvelous team. Paul, hello.
Hello there. And Penny
Any
says hello
personal
to you.
news that you want to share with us very, very briefly? Obviously
No.
not. You're very, very welcome, even though nothing apparently seems to have happened to you in the last week. Stuart, hello, Stuart. Good to see you. Any news? Any personal news?
I've been elected to a union position. I got a certificate of Keir Starmer. That's about it this week.
Yeah, a certificate from Keir Starmer is something to be exultant about. And hiya, Jane. It's so good to see you.
Hello.
Continue to love the picture of the dog behind you. I've got a picture of Jeremy Corbyn behind me. Any personal news you want to share?
I've just read a really good book about Chernobyl, and that's about all that's happened in my life in the last week.
You're so erudite.
It was a really good book.
Yeah, I've just finished the Thursday Murder Club, which is okay. I quite enjoy it. I listen to it when I'm walking. Right, let's move to... Of course, I've completely forgotten to tell everybody that, unfortunately, Sam Townsend is not with us this week and not for the next few weeks. It's not because she's fallen out with us. It's because she's doing something very, very important, and it's called her away. And we're just delighted to see that she's moving onwards and upwards in her political career, and we wish her all the very best with that. But it does mean that we are reduced in number, and we've taken the opportunity, people, to mess about with the format just a little bit, and hopefully you'll enjoy that. But sort of now moment of the week, and let's move on. Oh, Jane, what's your moment of the week?
So my moment of the week actually was Aaron Bastani did an interview with the new mayor of Tower Hamlets, Lutfer Rahman, who I'd never heard of before, and it wasn't really like the main point of the interview, but I was just amazed by the stuff that when he was in council before, he said they kept the EMA allowance for young people even though the Conservative government scrapped it. They introduced free school meals, they had a homelessness fund, and they used it for various things, and in some cases to support people renting increases that would mean they'd have to move out of the area to keep them in the area. And I just had no idea you could do anything that good in council, especially when you've got, Tory government cuts. I know as one councillor it's probably extremely hard to achieve that, but to think that when you can get a group of like-minded people, you could actually do something that amazing, that just really blew me away.
He left the Labour Party, and I think he's I can't remember what the name of his party is now.
Aspire.
That's right. And but for me, it just emphasizes what a radical agenda and how popular it is, because he's just been swept to power, and they've just totally ignored accusations of corruption and all kinds of things. The people want him. They want him because of what he's doing for them. And for the Labour Party, Was that brave? Well done. Yes, I agree with you, Jane. Fabulous news. Stuart, moment of your week.
Mine is that as we all face the huge cost of living crisis, Tees Valley Metro Mayor Ben Houchin got a pay rise of 74%. His wages have gone up from 37 and a bit grand to 65 grand, which is a shocking amount of money. And obviously the panel that had suggested it was the right thing to do wasn't the deciding factor, it was his cabinet. So he's essentially given himself a massive pay rise as people struggle to put food on the table and stay warm.
That's outrageous, isn't it, really? So we'll be coming to a similar thing in a little while. Politicians just lining their own pockets, irrespective of the people who have arranged them. Remember, people, that you can tell us your moment of the week and we'll try and pick them up. Sort of everybody is watching them. Tim Dredge gives a shout out for Rochelle, who was at the national demo in Durham. Sort of the Hassock Field video, Neil Terry's moment of the week was seeing Samantha, Lynn and Laura with banners held high at Wakefield. So that I'll be going that next year because I'll be living in Sheffield. But so for the moment, it was just them. And he was at the reopening of the Station Hotel in Ashton. Explain a bit more, Neil. Jacqueline Hemmings asks, does he get expenses paid as well, Stuart?
He does. In fact, his office, I think, him and his staff cost about £3.5 million a year in wages. So it's pretty rough going for the people at Teesside to see that while they are facing some real poverty in the region.
Yeah. It ties in with the news today that whilst sort of unemployment has its lowest ever level, so are wages in real terms. And it's just ordinary people just being squeezed while those people with money are just feathering their own nest. Paul, your moment of the week.
I'm going to go with a big one that's just come in tonight. It is just when you thought the Tories couldn't get any lower, just when you thought politicians couldn't get any lower, we know that there's loads of people being investigated for sexual misconduct. A Tory MP is being investigated now for rape. Apparently it's been going on for 7 years, something to do with this. So this is the new thing. So the Conservatives have told this man not to go into Parliament, but are deciding whether or not to suspend the whip. This comes on the back of, like this seems very strange, like how many people who don't seem to be able to conduct themselves with any kind of decorum. And I think sometimes people make a false equivalence between like someone saying something wrong or doing something wrong with what these accusations actually are. Incredibly serious accusations of massive arrogance, misconduct. And it's a little bit like I don't know if anyone watched the what was that thing called, it's on Netflix at the moment, The Anatomy of a Scandal, and it's all about the kind of the same topic, and it rings very true about this like kind of this arrogant elitist attitude that they have where they can just do whatever they want and like, oh yeah, no, I'm allowed to do this, I'm allowed to sexually assault people. It's not just Tories who do this, a lot of men do this and feel entitled to it, but those men who don't, we need to be really, really calling this out all the time. So yeah, that's my moment of the week.
I think you're absolutely right. The problem is, though, the voting public, let them get away with it. They just keep electing these people. Mia, congratulations. Her moment of the week is she's been asked to run for Equalities Officer. I think that would be a great idea, Mia. You go for it. Don't worry if you lose. Just stand up and go for it. Jacqueline Hemmings says her moment of the week was when Rachel McLean was advising those affected by the cost of living crisis to get better jobs or work longer hours. Or Jacqueline, of course, you can make a meal for 30p. Sort of just find out how to live properly and buy it. Supermarkets own brands, and you'll be able to make your meals for 30p. I mean,
did you see Fabricant? Did you see Fabricant come out and said that there needs to be an immediate raise in benefits?
No.
Outflanking Labour to the left, Michael Fabricant. Interesting, very interesting. Apparently he visited a food bank and didn't realise how bad things were, and is now completely it's like a road to Damascus moment for him. He's just suddenly decided that benefits need to be raised and this cost of living crisis is absolutely appalling. You got Michael Fabricant, the walking
it hardly took a great brain to understand that. Neil Terry tells us about the Station Hotel, Jacqueline Hemmings tells us the way things are going, there's only going to be one Tory in the House of Commons. As they done. Right, thank you for your moments of the week, everybody. We're a minute over time. I was told I had to finish by 10 past and I've failed miserably. Okay, let's move on.
Now it's time for the big story.
Now, I lied to you last week because I told you last week that we're going to make the Queen's speech the big story. But then when I put it in the poll, only 2 people wanted it. So I just changed my mind. So the big story is what you wanted to be the big story, which was the Northern Ireland Protocol. And I'm going to start with you, Paul. I know we dealt with this to a degree last week, but still, can I ask you the same starting question again? Briefly, can you just outline what the hell all this about a protocol is all about, how it came about and why it's affecting politics in Northern Ireland?
So as part of the Good Friday Agreement, as most people know it, there was an agreement that power would be shared and that the largest party would be able to nominate a First Minister and then the Deputy First Minister would come from the second largest party. And what this has always meant in practice is that the two, a lot of people would consider them to be sectarian parties, the DUP and Sinn Féin. Sinn Féin actually are focusing more on issues rather than actual sectarian stuff. Certainly, like they always will say that they're Republicans, but you know they've been focusing on the cost of living crisis and all these different things. But they've traditionally ended up getting the Deputy First Minister, which is why we had all sorts of things. We had like the DUP came out of Ian Paisley, the Reverend Ian Paisley, the older one, not the one who's in Parliament now, the one who died a few years ago, who was a Presbyterian minister, and very, very like old-fashioned, don't believe in evolution, all these kind of things. And Sinn Féin have been linked to certain members of paramilitary organisations, as have the DUP. So one of them being Republican, one of them being loyalist, as they call them. So anyway, this has always happened, and they've always had like a DUP First Minister, and the deputy has been Sinn Féin traditionally, and then it's just switched. It's just switched over, and Sinn Féin are now getting to nominate the First Minister, and the DUP are having to nominate the second, the deputy, and they are refusing to do so, and therefore that means that the Parliament can't run. So this is it's not the first time there have been issues with Stormont being able to run. Like there was the cash for ash issues and all those things that they have crippled the ability to function. But this time, I think there's a huge willingness from people on both sides of the sectarian divide and no side of the sectarian divide to get things done. It just appears to be the DUP saying, actually, no, we're not going to do this, because they are saying that it's because of the Brexit protocol, the Northern Ireland Protocol, which basically means that Northern Ireland can do a little bit better than the rest of the UK because it can trade with the EU on the old terms, but that puts basically a trade border in the Irish Sea. So Northern Ireland is separate from mainland UK.
I mean,
So, yeah.
sort of, do you not accept that? Let's just pause there for a moment, Paul, because, I mean, do you not accept that the protocol is a massive negative, both in principle, because it does make Northern Ireland a very different part of the UK to the rest of the UK, and sort of it's in terms of trade with Britain, it is very disruptive, isn't it? I mean, I've got a cost here, a provisional cost of £850 million per annum for a province of 1 million people. So do you not agree that, you know, the DUP have got a genuine beef with the protocol? Or do you think it's just an excuse to keep Sinn Féin out?
It's very difficult to say. It would have been interesting to see what would have happened if there wasn't a big reason for them to say that they weren't going to do this. It would have been interesting to see if they would have done this if they got the First Minister as well, but we can't know that. We can't know that. It would be all speculation. Many people think that they would have found an excuse no matter what, because you think about how far things came. Like, you know, Ian Paisley and Martin McGuinness became very close friends. They used to go to the chapel and pray together and things like that, like at Stormont. So they actually became genuine friends, and they had been the worst of enemies. And I think now with the generations moving on, that kind of burying the hatchet has gone, and we're sort of taking a step back there with regards to the relations between the parties. But who knows what would have happened. The DUP have sort of got a point in that the Northern Ireland is being treated differently to the rest of the UK, but it has actually been treated a bit better. And they wanted Brexit, you know, they wanted Brexit, and it's the only way it could possibly have worked. So, like, they've signed off on it. Boris Johnson got Brexit done, didn't he? This is how he did it.
Well, I mean, there is that aspect to it, that the sort of the Labour Party have been saying that clearly Johnson either didn't understand what he was signing, or he understood it and lied to everybody else about what its consequences were going to be, or he never intended to keep it and he was always going to double cross the EU. I mean, sort of, and you tend to think, well, what else is there? Just one question before you go, Paul, and I must move on to my other two guests. But sort of, if we continue like we are now, with sort of the DUP refusing to take anything but their salaries. They're refusing to have they're not meeting, they're not forming an executive, not forming a legislative, they're not doing anything apart from taking their salaries. It's called a zombified Northern Ireland. I mean, what will be the consequences of a zombified devolved government for Northern Ireland?
Just a lot more of the same, really. I think it does suit the Tory party to do this. Like, obviously, the Tory party will side with the DUP because there's a vote thing there. Like, if anything ever goes wrong, obviously, like before, when there was when the Conservatives failed to find a majority, they had the confidence and supply arrangement with the DUP. So they want to keep those links going anyway. But remember as well, the Conservatives are on the side of the DUP as well when it comes to Northern Ireland. Like, you know, they don't really want Northern Ireland to have its own power, in my view. They really aren't as committed to it as a lot. Like, some of them will be, but some of them who understand the situation will be, but they aren't fully committed to devolution. And the fact that this will limit devolution, this will become like rule from Westminster. If they can't rule from Stormont, it'll be rule from Westminster. Now that suits the Tory government. They're quite happy to rule Northern Ireland. It's one of their little colonies, isn't it? They can treat it like a little colony, even though the majority of people in Northern Ireland want to see Stormont work.
Thank you. Neil Terry points out the Tories ignored valid concerns. Celtic, Layson Tivan, sorry if I pronounced that wrong. He or she is absolutely decided, are you for the lying imperialist Tory establishment? So they've made their mind up already, God bless you. Neil Terry says the Tories are just blaming the EU, it's all their fault. Ellie Green points out that Northern Ireland rejected Brexit, and the DUP wanted Brexit, and that's really interesting, isn't it? A question, Jane, I'm going to ask you a question from the comments. How will all this affect the Good Friday Agreement?
So I'm not an expert in this. This isn't I don't have a great deal of knowledge in this area, but I would think that this is really very destabilizing, because I'm just thinking what the impact would be in Scotland or Wales if those devolved government structures are suddenly paralysed and orders started coming through from Westminster from a truly awful Tory government, and the public feeling about that. And my understanding about the situation in Northern Ireland is that the Good Friday Agreement was a very delicate negotiation that ended truly terrible things happening to people. And if you destabilize a situation, if you destabilize a society, especially one that's building a foundation on this relatively recent agreement, it's an awful thing to do. It's a terrible risk to take.
Is it not a terrible risk to take also, just going back on the agreement that you made, that we signed internationally with the EU?
I mean, the government have shown a reckless, complete lack of care or compassion for people throughout the United Kingdom for the last 12 years, but the way that they've belittled the situation in Northern Ireland and the way it's been ignored and used as a political football in the Brexit negotiations, and now I think as some sort of diversion tactic potentially for the awful things that are, the awful situations the Tory government's got themselves into now, it's just unforgivable.
Tim Dredge, Jane, says, you always start off saying, I'm not an expert, but then come up with some of the most incisive, perceptive comments. I would second that. Today, Liz Truss, Jane, has announced legislation to allow the United Kingdom unilaterally to take action over the trade border in the Irish Sea. Now, there's some question about whether they're just going to invoke Article 16 or whether they're going to go further and just overturn it. I mean, they've been accused by Sinn Féin of pandering to the DUP. Do you think that this is pandering to the DUP, or do you think it's? Do you have any sympathy with the Tories when they say that the EU is just not going far enough on sorting out what is a genuine grievance for the businesses of Northern Ireland?
No, I'd given the amount of time the Tories have had to take a sensible stance and try and find a solution to this, and the way it's been ignored by them, the way they've promised one thing to one person, another to someone else, thinking that on this international stage it's not all going to collide at some stage and people are going to realise they've been telling different lies to every different person. I don't have any sympathy for the Conservative Party at all in this, and I don't think they're pandering to the DUP. I think they're pandering to the same right-wing tendencies within the UK population, that they want to vote them in at the next election, in the same way they're telling people that people going to food banks are lazy and need to learn how to budget. They want to take a hardline stance against this as well. They can't be seen to be giving any ground. I think that's what that's about.
Thank you for that. I mean, if I'm allowed to comment at this point, I would say that we do have a standoff between the DUP and the EU, and the British government is in the middle. And the question is why is the answer to go against our agreement with the EU and change those laws? Why don't we just change the laws about a devolved government and make it that we don't need a deputy minister from the DUP? Why are we changing that set of laws to solve the problem and not that set of laws? I think it's pandering to the DUP, and that for all the reasons Paul and you pointed out. Stuart, the US have got involved in this. They say they're very worried about the Good Friday Agreement, and that this might well affect any trade agreement between us and the United States. I mean, what is the significance, do you think, of that development?
I think it goes to show you how kind of fragile the peace has always been on the island of Ireland, but also how much this affects trade globally, the economy globally. Certainly it would have a very direct effect on mainland Britain. Should we go into changing the rules that we play by with our largest trading partner? We're already struggling to get product onto the shelves in Northern Ireland with regards to food. Do we really want, at a time of increased inflation, cost of living crisis, do we want to create a war of pricing? It's not the right time to be doing this. And certainly America, in its own interests and the interests of the people on the island of Ireland, I've sent members from the Ways and Means Committee, which I understand they get things done. And they're having meetings across Europe. It's not like they've just come to see Boris to get things sorted. They understand that this has very broad implications, that if we just point fingers at each other in Westminster, it isn't going to actually improve the lives of people anywhere in Great Britain.
I absolutely agree. And I mean, Dean, this is a rhetorical question, but you can answer it, Stuart. Do you not think it's horrific that the Tories' solution to this problem, which is no problem, nobody's saying it isn't, but is to risk not only our trading links with the EU, but our trading links with the US, with all the horrific consequences that you were talking about just then?
I mean, it's a very simple answer. We know what the interests of these people are, and we know that it's about securing their own jobs, opening up old wounds to guarantee them election success. I'm really surprised that Boris hasn't come out with an outlandish, another bridge or a tunnel, or would be doing airplane drops every half hour. A plane would go across the border, some crazy plan by Boris to solve it. None of that's come to light, has it?
The Belfast Wall. Yeah. I've lost it. Tim Dredge saying that this is an important, hugely important debate. Thank you for covering it. Mark Lungley, there's a very simple way to resolve this. The UK to join a customers union. I don't understand that, Mark. You'll have to explain a bit more. Then there's a discussion, sort of Celtic Laison Tivan. Please forgive me if I can't pronounce your name right. It's the north of Era. The sooner the Tories are banned, the better. Well, we'd all agree with that. Somebody's pointed out that the young people of Northern Ireland think very, very differently to their elders. Finally, Stuart, last question to you. What do you see as the outlook on this? How do you see this developing?
I don't see any short-term positives. I would imagine that the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland is going to have his diary quickly booked up, isn't he? And there's going to be a lot of interviews, but I don't see progress happening anytime soon.
And that frozen nature of the whole thing, that's going to make things worse, not better, isn't it? Paul, very briefly, because we're meant to be finishing this.
Yeah, there's something I think we've really missed in this, and I think that's when you were mentioning about Biden, and I don't think people realise in the UK how people worldwide perceive the occupation of Ireland by Great Britain. Like, it's an imperialist conquest of Ireland. You know, this is not a natural union. The island of Ireland was its own island, and Britain went and used it as a colony on its doorstep. You know, starved the people, did all sorts of awful things, and reneged on agreement in order to keep a part of it. They set up an area of Ireland where they said they could keep a political union where they will always have people who want to be part of Great Britain as part of that. And that has changed. That has now changed where that's not really the case anymore. More and more people see themselves as being part of Ireland, because that has been happening for the last year. You can be both now. You can be both. But I think we've completely missed like the idea of Biden. Absolutely, like, you can see his disdain. He is dripping with disdain for the UK because of Ireland. And that's what he's brought. These are the tales he's been brought up with. He has been brought up with the UK are occupying Ireland, and other people aren't really seeing that. And people in this country don't see us as illegally occupying another country for years and years and years, and then not giving it all back when the writing was on the wall. You know, people don't see that. And I think that's a really interesting thing. It never appears in our debate in this country, and yet it's so fundamental to the entire thing.
It's certainly fundamental to the stance of Sinn Féin, and one of the problems with the DUP, isn't it, is that you're absolutely correct. They were promised that they would always be a majority, and suddenly they're not. And the other thing to understand about these sorts of siege mentalities is that if Sinn Féin are defeated, well, they just come back at the next election. But if the DUP are defeated and Sinn Féin join ERA, they're defeated forever. And that explains the intensity of their opposition. Thank you very much indeed, everybody. It wasn't a customers' union, it was a customs union. We had one of those, they threw it away, and there you go. Right, we're only 2 minutes behind, people. We're sort of, I'm going to put my foot on the accelerator now. Let's go, 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 go. Other questions, other questions. Ellie Green, if Biden sees that, maybe you could see the case for Palestine against Israel. We're just about to discuss that. Oh, the sixth sense, Ellie. Sixth sense. Well done to you. The next question we're going to discuss is the death, the murder, the assassination of an Al Jazeera journalist, ostensibly by the Israeli security forces. Let's see what the team has to say about that. Jane, tell us what's going on first, and tell us all about the background and why we're discussing it.
So Shireen Abu Akleh, she's a Palestinian American, or she was a Palestinian American journalist who'd been working for the last 20 years uncovering the atrocities happening in Palestine and abuses against the Palestinian people. Last week, she was shot in the face and killed by a sniper while she was covering some events that were going on in Palestine. She was with 3 other journalists at the time who've all said that she was murdered by an Israeli sniper, that she was working for Al Jazeera with her colleagues. I don't know if people have seen the footage of the funeral, where the heavily armed Israeli forces were jostling, attacking the people carrying the coffin, touching the coffin. I don't see what business they'd have to have been grabbing and touching at the coffin. That seemed unnecessary. And then today I've seen that there's been footage released of, I think it must have been about 30 ridiculously heavily armed occupation forces storming into the hospital where Shireen's body was laying, literally running and storming into the hospital with big guns. I cannot for the life of me think why that would be a necessary thing to do. So it's caused a huge amount of upset. The way that it's been reported in the Western media has caused some further upset. Because it was reported in a very neutral way by some outlets in this country. I think the BBC reported, that she'd been killed, and repeated, I think, the lines from the Israeli government saying that she might have been killed by Palestinian. I don't know. You didn't say terrorists, but they suggested it wasn't them, but it might have been Palestinians that killed her. Which is outright denied by the colleagues that were with her, and they've advised that they had told the authorities they were going in there. They were experienced journalists. They wouldn't go into a situation like that, where they could have got involved in that kind of crossfire. It was absolutely the Israeli sniper. They're saying.
I mean, Haaretz, the Israeli newspaper, has really got very upset about what they call the biased reporting of this by Western news sources. They say that they've been over-egging the degree of violence in Jenin, which is where it's all started. That the reason they got involved in the funeral was because they'd agreed with the Palestinian authorities that they could have a funeral, but that the coffin would travel in a car and not be carried down the street, and that it wouldn't be draped with a Palestinian flag. And that's why they attacked it, to take the flag off. I've heard as well the thing about the suggestion that it's a Palestinian gunman. I agree with you; it's absolute nonsense. But the Palestinians have the bullet and won't hand it over for analysis because they say they don't trust the Israelis to do the right thing by it. I mean, do you think that we're in danger in the West of over-egging the anti-Israeli comments, that we're in danger of underestimating the degree of Palestinian overestimating the degree of Palestinians sort of suffering in this? I mean, what's your comment about those claims by Haaretz?
Oh, well, I've seen the word clashes used again, and this constantly comes up in situations where there have been abuses against Palestinian people, clashes. And in this situation and many others, when you watch the video footage, an armed policeman with a baton bashing someone carrying a coffin, that's not a clash for me. That's police brutality. And I don't understand. She was a Palestinian lady. I don't understand why it was fair to say that she couldn't have a Palestinian flag on her coffin. Perhaps I'm ignorant of certain facts and I'm not appreciating the full situation, but to me that doesn't sound like an unfair request.
I'm so sorry, everybody. Oh, Jane, we lost you there.
Back. Sorry.
You were halfway through a sentence. Can you finish that off?
It came through, John. It came through.
It's my internet connection, which is the problem. I mean, just to back up what Jane was saying there, one of the things that outraged me was the description of what happened in Gaza last year as a war between Gaza and Israel. And Gaza fought bravely by sitting there while the Israelis dropped bombs from aeroplanes. And just one other thing is, the Israel have been accused of systematic targeting of journalists, haven't they, Jane? 144 journalists wounded or killed since 2018. I mean, Do you think that's the case?
I mean, I do. They've been well publicised, these cases. I mean, the pictures of Shireen show that she was very clearly wearing the press clothing. It was very obvious that she was a member of the press, and she'd informed them she was going to be there with her colleagues. There's been a lot of other cases where, photo evidence has shown it's very clear that people were pressed. There couldn't have been an easy mistake made. And in what other country in the world, in what other civilized country in the world does this happen, that journalists accidentally get shot to that extent?
Thank you very much, Jen. An awful lot of comments agreeing with you. I think it's black and white. Stuart, the White House has condemned this. Let's go back to this Ellie Green's statement right at the beginning. The White House has condemned, but they don't do anything. What do you reckon to US action on this issue? Are they backing off when they should be stepping in?
I think it's an interesting change to the kind of behaviours that we got from the US under Donald Trump and his government. Certainly, they were very supportive with regards to the Israeli government in most cases. I think at the moment, no other nation is really doing more than a strongly worded letter, and I don't foresee that any nation's going to take that big leap and do anything further, which is incredibly sad. That we can't secure any form of justice for this at the moment.
I read an article in The Guardian which said that there's a group called AIPAC or AIPAC, who are funding pro-Israeli Republicans, sort of to the tune of millions of dollars in elections. I mean, do you think that the Republicans in America are compromised by this kind of behavior?
Absolutely. I mean, certainly anyone who's taken donations of any form are compromised on their votes, whether it's, donations from housing providers in the UK, nation states making, strong donations to Republicans in America.
Thank you. I mean, this is interference in elections, isn't it? And when Russia do it, everybody's up in arms. Neil Terry, yes, they did bomb the Al Jazeera building in Bethlehem, but they claimed that it was a terrorist headquarters. I mean, we don't bother with truth nowadays, Neil. We just say something. I want to pick up here now, though, Jacqueline Hemming's comment. I don't see why the establishment media insist on continuing with this narrative that the Israeli-Palestinian situation is a clash of equals. Paul, there was a really good article by Arwa Mardawi in the Guardian where she talked about Schrodinger's Palestine. And she said that sort of when we're talking about the state of Palestine and a Palestinian nation, it doesn't exist. Nobody pays any consequence to it at all. It doesn't exist. As soon as we start talking about terrorism, Palestinians exist very much. Palestinians are only terrorists, but they don't exist when it comes. So they're endangering the peace on one half, but we can't possibly create a peace on the other because that we don't take them into account at all. And Jacqueline Hemmings is absolutely on the same page as that. Are you on the same page as that? Do you think that we have here a massive clash of unequals?
Absolutely. You think about, people talk a lot. You get a lot of people who complain about people being cancelled. You've got a whole nation that was genuinely cancelled. So this week we've had people coming out with their articles in mainstream media saying, "Oh, I've been cancelled. It's terrible. Look at what's happened to me. Here are my millions of Twitter followers. Tell them all that they haven't been cancelled in the slightest." You've got a country that used to exist. and then now it doesn't exist. And even based upon the agreements, it should have still partially existed, even though, like, you know, Palestine used to be a state where there were Jewish people, where there were Christian people, where there were Muslim people, all living, all allowed to live. And then they created another nation right on top of it called Israel, and kept parts of it Palestinian, but Israel have over time taken more and more of that land. That country has been cancelled. It isn't even recognised as a state by other countries. Like, you can't. This is absolutely appalling. There are Palestinians who have their homes taken from them by people who come from the other side of the world, have maybe moved out of Brooklyn and have been promised a place in Israel, and they'll kick people out of their homes in order to home someone from, like, the opposite side of the world. They are second-class citizens in the place that they live. Or they're not even second-class, you know, they're the lowest possible class. They are treated inhumanly. And you've got Amnesty International and the UN. The UN aren't exactly like this left-wing organisation, you know, and they've condemned it, and they've said it's an apartheid state. Israel's an apartheid state. Now, where do you... If we aren't going to recognise that and deal with it, then what are we doing? What's the point? You know, the UN are saying it. Ireland have said it. You know, lots of nations have said it. Israel is an apartheid state. But you say it in this country, and it's problematic. And, oh, no, you can't say that because you know, it's anti-Semitic. Of course it's not anti-Semitic. It's nothing to do with their Jewishness that makes them behave in this way. It's nothing to do with Judaism. It's not Judaism that's telling them to behave in this way towards the Palestinian people. There are Jews who live all around the world, peacefully, lovely. Like, you know, they're just the same as everyone else. There will be lovely people and there will be not so lovely people. It's nothing to do with that. It's anti-Semitic to say that it's anti-Semitic to complain about the actions of Israel. So I think we need to start really calling this out. I think we've given them far too much leeway. And I think, you know, if you think about all the things they've done, I'm just going to read a list of names out. This is from Loki. The Israel occupation killed Shireen Abu Akleh, but it also killed Yasser Mutaja, Ahmed Abu Hussein, Basil Faraj, Fadel Shana, Imad Abu Zara, Assam Tilawi, James Miller, Khalid Riyad Hamed, Mahmoud Al-Kumi, and Nazi Darwaze. All wore clothing identifying themselves as press. All of them. That's a list of names. I don't know when that's from. That's relatively recent though. So, you know, there is no excuse for this, and there is no excuse for attacking the coffin. This is appalling behaviour. This is inhuman behaviour. If we were seeing this elsewhere, we would be absolutely furious, and I hope that we start to change our reaction and actually try to do something about this.
And conference did pass a motion. And also, Paul, of course, there was a big demonstration in London last weekend, to which our friend Mike Dixon attended.
I think Jane's disappeared, by the way, for a second.
Yeah, Jane's taking a bat home. It must be something I said. Some lovely comments. God bless you for your comments. They're so important to us. Jacqueline Hemmings wonders whether Israeli lobbyists, I think we need to be careful, and just as by this we mean lobbyists for the state of Israel donate to the parties in the UK. They certainly have influence in both parties. In the UK, and that's a cause of problems. Starmer is funded by Zionists, says Ellie Green. He's on record saying, "I am a Zionist without reservation." I think part of the problem here, Ellie, is that it depends what you call a Zionist. Is a Zionist somebody who simply believes that the state of Israel has a right to exist? In which case, I think most of us here would be Zionists. Or does it mean extreme wing supremacists, right-wing supremacist Zionists? in which case none of us would have any truck with them whatsoever. That the definition of the word Zionist is a big problem. And one last thing I'll say before we move on is that everybody just go and look up the Battle of Jenin. All this is because she was covering trouble in the refugee camp at Jenin. And Jenin was set up in 1953 when they took over the West Bank and just chucked those people off the land and shoved them into a camp. And they've been there all this time. Jane, you're back.
Internet broke, but my phone's still working. So
Well, you look just as good on your phone, but we can't see the dog. Oh, no, we can. It's there. We're all right. We're okay. Okay, last question of all. Stuart, the last question people wanted to talk about was the proposal to sack 90,000 civil servants. Give us your take on this, Stuart. Tell us what's going on and give us your take on it.
So the Prime Minister and his team want to cut 91,000 civil service jobs to take us back to the 2016 levels that we had and save us about 3.1 billion quid a year. The reasoning behind it is that Jacob Rees-Mogg said that, we took on a load of people because of COVID, and we took on a load of people because of Brexit, and because that's gone away now, we can cut the fat down, make it leaner, and it'll benefit everyone. Obviously, except those 91,000 people who they made redundant, which is shocking. In the past, we don't have a swollen civil service the way that the government makes out. We're still 50 odd thousand off its peak that was about in 2005. And obviously, most people in this country feel that they probably want a better service than they're getting now. And ultimately, that really means investment into the civil service, supporting its workers to deliver a really high quality service and having people to actually do the job.
Now, I'm going to give you three things. Mark Sropka says they're just being made scapegoats for failing government. Dave Penman, General Secretary of the FDA, suggests that this is just the government's culture war against the civil service, but he suggests it might be just an ill thought out job slash. So you got three things there. Is it scapegoating, trying to find somebody to blame? Is it a culture war against the idea of a civil service? Or is it just a job slash, ill thought out? And what do you think lies behind this? Any or all of those three, or something different?
I think it's a combination of all three. Certainly, we have a government who likes to point the finger at aspects of the machine of government to say this is why we haven't been able to deliver this. We want to cut these people's jobs to save people taxpayers' money, when we know it's a government that's put taxes up 15 times in the last couple of years. It's just, we have a government made up of people who don't see the value in a strong civil service. They don't see the value of seeing the, Department of Education being well-funded and supported to actually, do the job it's meant to do. And this is across a number of different departments that touch on every aspect of the British people's lives. We want things done and done properly, done quickly. We want really good service, and you can't do that on a bare bones operation at the expense. Ultimately, these 91,000 people need jobs somewhere. The government will keep saying that there's 1 million vacancies for people. Well, they've just filled 1 in 10 of them, cutting these people's jobs. It's a shocking thing that will ultimately cost more money than it saves. All these people, add to the economy. The second that you make them, redundant, they take something away from the economy.
Thank you, Paul. Now I'm going to come to you, Jane. Please forgive me, Paul. I'm going to come to you, Jane. The government says this isn't ideological. It's about good housekeeping. that they're going to just take off jobs that are no longer needed, because we employed these people to deal with Brexit and coronavirus. Those things are now fading away. So they say they're going to let go 70 staff who are still working on the climate change conference. Now, is there any justification for what the government is doing whatsoever, in your opinion?
No, I feel there's absolutely not. They'd cut the staff numbers by 19% from coming into power going up to 2016. So, they'd done a 19% staff cut, and they seem to go around in this strange cycle where they decimate public services to the lowest point they possibly can. They realise it's breaking to the extent that people can't cope with it anymore. So they've wasted, they've lost all that skill and experience out of the service. They've probably paid redundancy money. And then they go through the expensive process of recruiting and training new staff only a few years later again, to let them go. And I'm sure in a few years' time again, it will be breaking to the point where they realise they can't get away with this anymore, much like the police force, where they cut 21,000 police officers, realised that it's not good for their law and order image. So after getting rid of all that experience out of the police force, they're now going to spend money training and recruiting new police officers to try and replace what they took out just a few years ago.
That's the thing, isn't it? It's training and recruiting them. And I'll tell you where else you're right. It's the visa office. We clearly need more people in the visa office, and we need visa offices. You're absolutely correct. What do you think the consequences of this huge cut are going to be?
It's astronomical what they're going to do. 1 in every 5 workers in the entire civil service. So the 2 biggest departments are less than 90,000. So we've got a Tory MP telling people that one of the kind things we've done is put job centres there for them. A day before they announce that they're going to sack 1 in 5 of all the job workers in those offices, or the whole service they could do, because that would nearly get them up to the 91,000. It's just ridiculous.
Thank you. Some lovely comments. Neil Terry wonders why the RSPCA are investigating the government to work out where they're getting all these dead cats. It's so funny, it's Neil Terry, isn't it? Neil Terry then also points out that Rees-Mogg is going around counting the officers not at their desks, saying they need to be at their desks working, and then he's saying we don't need any of these people at all. Jacqueline Hemmings, the Tories will do anything to avoid taxing the wealth of the risk. Not much support for the government on political unmuted today. One last thing before we go. Paul, Labour's reaction to this has not been to condemn it. Labour's reaction has been to sort of accuse the government of, quote, pointless rhetoric and lack of action, and to say they should be bothering instead with an emergency budget to support people struggling with bills. Do you not agree that this is a pathetic and inadequate response to the government's suggestion? Paul, that's a leading question, if ever that was one, but sort of kick off. You've got 2 minutes.
It's politicking, isn't it? It's like, I think the people who are in charge of the Labour Party at the moment really believe that the best way to gain power is to have this middle of the road, not scaring anyone, not really saying anything, just saying, oh, that's not very good, is it? You really should be concentrating on other things, rather than just saying what it is. No, we support workers. We will support the right of people to work. We will talk to trade unions, and really taking a position on this. You know what? Maybe this is the right thing to do in certain areas of the country. Maybe certain areas of the country will be thinking, okay, we just want another safe pair of hands because they think the Tories are a safe pair of hands. Personally, I would like to see something way stronger. I would like to see real policies coming out. I would like to see people defended. I'd like to see a bit of passion. I'd like to see a bit of interest. And I'd like to see people who speak to people in a way that people who I know would understand and care about. And I don't think this does that at all. I don't think this meets people where they are at. And was it Blair who said that? Meet people where they were at. But I don't think it does that. It kind of just talks around an issue and without actually saying anything at all.
Thank you very much indeed. And with that, I'm going to bring us to an end, because one thing we promised ourselves is that we need to start stopping at 10. And so we've done that spot on the doddle. I'm going to ask Paul in 2 seconds just to tell you how you can support Socialist Think Tank. Political Unmuted is so grateful to Socialist Think Tank for providing a platform for these discussions. We hope that you've enjoyed it. Your comments have been spectacular. I hope that you feel that we've taken them fully into account this week, which is something that's been very dear to my wishes for some time. I have to say thank you to the team, Paul Daly, Stuart Sutherland, Jane. God bless you. You've been brilliant, and people have been saying so. Thank you so very much. I'm going to say goodbye. Paul, how can we support Socialist Think Tank?
Okay, so the best way to support Socialist Think Tank at the minute, in order for us to grow our audience, is to share all of our stuff, is to like all of our stuff. And if you really, really like what we do it on all platforms. If you're a Facebooker, go on YouTube and go down and watch our video for a few seconds and like it and get it up and boost it and things like that, because those things really do matter. Write a comment, get involved in the conversation. That's what we want to do. We want to see people subscribed to us. We want to see a little bit of growth, because that is the way that's the only things are against us with regards to spending money on advertising and those kind of things. We don't have that. And without that platform, we can't really grow. The only way to grow organically is with your good self. So tell other people to get involved, like our stuff. Become a member of Socialist Think Tank. You probably all who are watching this already are a member of Socialist Think Tank. But you can go and do those things. Listen to our podcasts as well. Stick it in your ears. Even if you don't listen to it, just put a list on. Just start at the very latest one, and it will go through all of our podcasts ever and give us more listens, and that also puts us higher up in people's minds. So that would be really, really good. Go and do that, and go and catch up on some old episodes as well. There are some really good ones out there. Watch our Palestine special. We talked about it tonight, and we've also got a Northern Ireland special as well that we did before. Honestly, we have got every single topic that we have talked about tonight. We've done specials on as well. This is how we know what we're talking about sometimes. We're all right. But thank you so much, everyone. I'm going to let you do the sign-off, John.
Thank you. I'm just going to say goodbye to everybody. Neil asks, are we not doing the second half? No, we're not doing the second half. To be blunt, Neil, everybody stopped listening while we played the music, and no pass around. Very few people actually listened to the second half. So we're going to let you all go. God bless you. See you next week. It'll be great. Thank you, team. Goodbye, everyone.
Take care, everyone.
We'll keep the red flag flying here.